your policy, PNG National Party's key policies, you have about 4 or 5. The main ones: economic development, good governance, effective public service, inclusive social development, and under that you've got health, education, and a number of other areas. I want to go into that a little later on, but as I just want to talk about this election, how we're going into it, the kind of problems we're going through, and you have certain ideas about reforming the electoral system. You want to talk about that, Franda?
Yeah, I'd really like to. I'd really like to, and now I'm going to my third election. I'm gaining more exposure and experience to the electioneering process in this country. And like other things, I think the entire electoral system is due for a massive overhaul. We have to reform the entire system because the way it was designed was good, but the practice of it over 47 years has now drifted away from the intended trajectory. It's moved away in a wrong direction. So in order to understand what I'm saying, you need to look at the basic parts to an election process. You look at the nomination process, you look at the campaign process, you look at the voting, polling process, you look at the counting process, you look at the formation of the government after the outcome. All these things, there's 5 parts to it. There may be other sub-parts to it. But these 5 major parts to it are now encountering major problems. The nomination process itself is posing a lot of problems. For example, in this particular election, 1 week nomination reduced to 1 day, and everybody fronted up to nominate 1 day on the, what date it was, it slipped my mind, but we all fronted up at the district office, all the candidates and all their supporters. And of course, you're creating a landscape for problems to happen. Yeah. So this nomination process has to be revisited. So you spread it out. You know, why not spread it out over a 1-year period, for example? So you don't agree.
For nominations?
For nominations.
1 year?
1 year, yeah. If you want to, make yourself known earlier on.
Okay. Yeah.
The whole point is, I'm just picking the figure 1 year. But the whole idea is to remove the need to aggregate candidates and population, their supporters, in the one space and create potential for friction right there at the front gate. So that's the nomination bit. So that part needed to be relooked. The other part within the nomination process is the switching of candidates. They sign up endorsement papers with one, and at the nomination day, they sign up with another party. That's already happening. Or, for example, even though notwithstanding existing laws, Electoral Commission officers are not applying it, they're accepting for nomination people who've been convicted of serious indictable offenses and those who have been sentenced. They're accepting their nominations.
Yeah, but now there is a Supreme Court decision on that now, completely banning that.
That's a Supreme Court decision. Yeah. So that has to be converted into a law.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court decision is a lower status. If you convert it in...
Supreme Court decision cannot be applied, or it can be bypassed, in other words? Is that what you're saying, that there has to be another law that confirms the Supreme Court decision?
Not everybody reads the Supreme Court decisions or National Court decisions.
Okay.
In order for clarity, for purposes of application, you need to convert it into the organic law, national elections, put it in there. Okay. So that's one of the things that needed to be taken up in this overhaul. The other part is the campaigns. Campaigns is where the main problem is. Well, part of the big problem is campaigns, very costly exercise. Campaigns have to be funded. Where do political parties get their money to finance their endorsed candidates? Where do they get their money? Some political parties are able to fund their candidates more heavily and therefore give more empowerment to their candidate in the field than those without money. So, number of issues come out of this. Number one, you trace that back to that political party. Where did that political party get that money? And if you study that issue carefully, you'll realize it's usually the ruling, the parties that are present in government.
That will have the most money too.
Have the most money. So the question is, where did they get it? That is a question that needs to be investigated. And even if you don't find answers, the fact that they are financially more empowered than other parties who are in opposition, for example, or not in parliament at all, but political parties out there, yes, without parliamentary representation, there's a major difference.
The playing field is not level at all.
Not level at all. Mm-hmm. Not level at all. We need to create a level playing field that doesn't discriminate on the basis of how deep your pocket is. Yes, yes. That leads to the question of where the money comes from, etc. The playing field needs to be level so that you find leaders, not people with financial empowerment. You find leaders. And you only achieve that if the playing field is level. And that comes to, that's when you're talking about campaigns, where costs are involved. Then there's the other issues about people barricading themselves into tribal areas, making it difficult for free flow of candidates across tribal boundaries.
To campaign.
To campaign. Mm-hmm. And that has become a source of violence and unfair, unreal outcomes. Is that how we should be selecting our leaders in inverted commas? Mm-hmm. Or should we be selecting warlords or people with financial means? So the question of the ability of the candidates to circulate in their district, in their province to campaign has become a major issue. So we need to look at how people should make themselves carry out their campaigns. Okay. Should it be for a longer period or a shorter period or no campaigns at all? These are questions that needed to be discussed so that you eliminate, again, problem areas. You eliminate issues of cost and sources of costs and also potential for barricading areas and not allowing for freedom of movement and ideas and for real campaigns to take place. So these are things that that you encounter, problems you encounter during the campaign. Then you come to the polling. Polling, physical voting, getting a ballot paper, going to the polling booth, marking out is in many areas now redundant. It's not practice. The actual practice that's evolved is young people muscle the ballot papers and mark it on behalf of
the people,
the tribe, the people. And again, does that bring about your leader? If not, as is the case in many areas now, and it's a rapidly growing growing trend, you need to look at that law. Yeah. You need to look at whether it's now desirable to continue to vote through ballot papers, do your polling, or you issue electronic voting system combined with the NID system. So everybody has an NID is registered, has got an employment number, tax number, and through that you are your identity as a voter is confirmed, and you are given one vote through fingerprinting or something. So we need to move away from this ballot paper business and maybe look at electronic voting and so on. And then you move away from the polling and you go into the counting. Counting, again, is beset with so many problems. It takes so long and it's fraught to all kinds of corruption in the counting room and disputes and delays and all of these things.
We have the RO problems right now.
RO problems already. It's gone to the national court. When people challenge a particular aspect of anything, it means that particular procedure needs to be reviewed. Yes. And you cut a easier, more acceptable pathway. Legislative reform never keeps pace with actual practice. And this is why election process in its totality has gone wrong. And that's why we're saying. And then you come to the end of counting. You have to, members are declared. Do they stick to their, is there anything that compels them to stick to the party that financed them, endorsed them, through which they've signed an agreement? Or are they free to run away? Yes, we have experience as a party. We won some seats. 3 ran away instantly. Notwithstanding that we had spent so much money on them, notwithstanding that they had signed an endorsement letter agreement with us, notwithstanding that they had also signed Form 30, which is registered at the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties.
Yeah, not the signs of a leader then, is it?
There you are.
Yeah.
But then who takes up follow-up action in order to screen the leaders from the non-leaders? This is a question. So as we're going through the election process, all I'm saying is this. This system is fraught with all kinds of problems. Time for a massive overhaul.
Okay. No, so PNG National Party comes in with some numbers, forms, becomes part of the government at this form. That
we will
is
be asking for that reform.
Agenda of election reforms, electoral reforms that you'll be looking
Definitely.
at. What about the existing, the OLIPAC, the whatever we have right now?
The key parts of the OLIPAC law had been struck down already by earlier Supreme Court decisions. Yeah. However, it was just in the semantics. The Supreme Court ruling was in the semantics. The outcomes that those provisions were intended to achieve is a desirable outcome. It's still there. All you have to do is to resign it. Nobody's made a serious effort. So we would need to look at wording it in a way that it's constitutionally acceptable and also gives you the outcome that you want, which is that once you are a member of a party, you stick to that party on certain core issues and you don't hop around. If you hop around, then off you go back to a by-election.
Yeah, okay. All right, you have 4 main kind of policies, platforms that the PNG National Party is standing on or moving forward with it, and then quickly touch on all of them. We are pushing for time a little bit.
Can I preface that?
Okay.
People always talk about policy, but let me say this.
Okay.
Policy. In the campaigns, political parties, candidates are pressed for policies. My own personal view, and as leader of PNG National Parties, you've got enough policies already in place, in black and white. All the laws you have have in this country are statements of policy. It's been legislated, so those are policies. The Constitution is policy. And the National Goals and Directive Principles, the 5 National Goals and Directive Principles in the first part of the Constitution, those are policy guidelines. It tells you exactly how to govern this country. So the broad direction you need are there, plus the 2050 Vision 2050 by the previous governments. Those are acceptable policy documents. Go back to the 8-point plan and you work your way forward to the later statement and then midterm strategy policy 2030, etc. All of these things are there. There is enough policy statement. So I don't think we will confuse the agenda if we keep talking about each individual, each party, everyone developing new party platforms. It's all there. The question now is not about the form, substance, content of policy. The question now is about priority. Remember, we are a developing nation. We have limited means. Policy requires resources to implement. So, because you know for a fact that you don't have financial resources to fulfill everybody's wishes, you got to look at all their competing demands and wishes, their dreams and visions. And as political leaders for the time being, you learn to prioritize. What is more important than others? You pick those few policies that are already in place and you advance them. And the others take their own place. But you got to be able to pick the first 4 or 5 or 6 core policy platforms that are already there and you run them forward. So the question is more about prioritization, picking your right priorities. So I'd rather debate and talk about priorities rather than policies.
Yeah, policies.
Although I do have issues to talk about in terms of policy reforms in, let's say, in the mining and petroleum or resource industry in general.
Okay. next.
I've always maintained that in order for there to be fair redistribution of the benefits of these resources, it's got to be owned by the state.